Welcome back to That's Football. My name is Gark Moldbridge. We are here today with the Chief Sports News Correspondent for the Mail on Sunday, Nick Harris, to chat all things Saudi Arabia. Lots of questions from me. Nick is a fantastic journalist. He wrote a piece that came out yesterday, which you can read. We'll put the link in the description. Nick, you've done so much stuff in football, especially around the business of football. Saudi Arabia. We've had different iterations of this in the past. You mentioned in your article with North America when we tried to do that in the 70s, with China, with Russia. Saudi Arabia, should we be worried?
If you mean, should we in England be worried that the Premier League are going to be usurped and that suddenly there's going to be a talent drain of all the best players in England going to Saudi Arabia, then no, we shouldn't be remotely worried. And neither should any other of the major established leagues. I don't see that happening. There's lots of question marks over exactly what they're trying to do and why. Obviously, Saudi Arabia are investing in top-level sport. They've effectively bought the elite golf in recent weeks by coming to an agreement with the PGA and the DP Tours. So they effectively own golf. They've been putting on major heavyweight boxing. They're into esports. There's talk about them starting to invest in tennis. They want to stage the Football World Cup, the Men's Football World Cup, almost certainly in 2034, I reckon. They will be staging the 2034 World Cup, probably in November, December 2034. And then in terms of the club side of the game, they want to develop the Saudi Pro League, which is a long-standing and well-established league within Saudi Arabia, but it's not a global property. And they want to sort of develop that, make it more professional. But the way they're going about it is sort of ringing the same alarm bells that rang around the Chinese Super League, particularly in 2016, and Live Golf, which is spending an enormous amounts of money to hire largely aging talent to sort of make it look attractive and glamorous. But I personally don't see this working in the short or medium term.
One thing from reading your article yesterday was I got thinking about Live Golf, and obviously they invested in Live Golf, made their own sort of breakaway golf league, and now they're sort of obviously united with PGA on a front going forward. It got me thinking, are they doing that with the Saudi Pro League? So are they going to invest in this, try and almost make us a little bit scared by taking top talent all around Europe? But then could they not just invest in the Premier League in the future?
Well, they obviously, the PIF, the Public Investment
Fund,
Saudi Arabia, of course, already own 80% of Newcastle United. So they already own one team.
Yeah.
And there's rules in place that prohibit any owner from owning more than 9.9% of more than one football club. So you could own 8% of a number of football clubs, but you can't own more than 9.9% of more than one club. So they've got Newcastle, so that's really all they can buy. I think the plan is to sort of supposedly make the Saudi Pro League attractive to a global audience, presumably try and get TV deals in lots of different countries. But the evidence of both Chinese Super League and Live Golf, which are the most obvious parallels, are that is not going to be easy or perhaps happen. And also the amount of money they are spending on the talent is just, it's a bit like Live Golf. Live Golf spent something like £650 million in 2022 just staging events. They were hemorrhaging money. There was no financial sustainability to it at all. And given that the money they're paying people like Ronaldo and Benzema and N'Golo Kante and some of the others, we talk about hundreds of millions of pounds a year, that there's no business sense that makes sense in doing that. They're not going to recoup that money. And you talk about signing all these stars from Europe's top leagues. Well, they are mostly aging players. I mean, Ronaldo is 38. I think Benzema 30, he's well into his 30s. Even N'Golo Kante is 32, I think. Ruben Neves is the only player so far who you could argue is very much in his prime at 26. So I think you would need a hell of a lot more players, a much bigger critical mass of genuinely peak players before you could start saying, they'd have a proposition that they can sell and market and attract audiences to watch it.
But I know with the clubs themselves, but is there a point, I'm a simpleton, I'm here to learn. Could they invest in the Premier League and the PIF fund own a proportion, if not all of the Premier League, the league itself?
I guess theoretically, PIF could make an offer to buy the Premier League as an entity, which would therefore require a majority of the clubs to vote in favour of that, because the Premier League is simply a group of the 20 clubs who are in it at any one time. So anything structural like that, I guess PIF could propose to the Premier League, we want to buy you for 20 billion quid, for example.
Yeah, and they've got that money, haven't they?
They have got the money, and it's actually an interesting thought, because we know that a lot of the club owners are primarily inspired by money. You just look around at the people who've come into the Premier League in the last couple of decades. So if the Premier League were offered 20 billion or 50 billion, and suddenly there was 1 or 2 billion pounds in it for each of the owners to let Saudi run and control the league, that would be a properly groundbreaking proposal. However, I expect that just like the Super League, the European Super League, was denounced and folded within days of being announced because of fan opposition and everything. There would be the most enormous outcry from the vast majority of football fans of those clubs, and so for that reason, I don't see it happening. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, there's been rumours in recent months that PIF are going to buy Formula One for 20 billion or 30 billion dollars and control that sport in the same way they will be controlling golf soon. But so far, there's there's never been even a suggestion that PIF would try and buy the Premier League as an entity.
Well, yes, it just got me thinking from your article as well, because even the way that the LIV and the PGA deal was structured, wasn't it? I mean, that nobody knew about that. There was 4 or 5 people in a meeting room, and then one day everyone just finds out that they're part of it. So I think it just got me thinking on that regard, really. Yeah,
I mean, you're right. The LIV Golf, sort of the rapprochement and that deal came out of nowhere. But the few people who had been involved, including the 10% owner of Newcastle, Amanda Staveley, who was involved in those talks for the last sort of 6 months, it was kept very tight. And in a way, I guess, you could argue that really the only way out of that impasse was going to be some sort of rapprochement where they agreed to do a deal, and it just came down to, well, how much money are PIF, LIV Golf, going to give to PGA Tour? It ultimately comes down to how big is the check. And eventually the negotiations, we don't know the numbers, but we imagine that, PIF, LIV Golf have just offered billions more, to the point that the PGA say, well, we can no longer refuse this money. We might as well get into bed with you, because it's ultimately all about money, and money talks.
So in terms of, obviously, as it stands now, they're going ahead, putting money into the Pro League. They own 4 of the teams in the league now, don't they? So how do they make this model? Obviously, they're putting so much money in. How do they start to get the money back? Because in your article, you mentioned like the TV deal that Sky had with the Chinese Super League, and that ended up being nothing. Do you see a moment in the future where, we're sat down watching the Saudi Pro League on a Saturday?
I personally don't see that, because I think to get to that point, you really would have to have a critical mass of peak age players, not like a Ronaldo and Benzema and generally retirement home age players with a few, current players under the age of 30. That's who, why is that attractive to anyone? You talked about PIF, took a 75% controlling stake in the 4 biggest clubs in Saudi Arabia earlier this month. And all the publicity around that has said they want to professionalize the league. They want to, modernize it. They want to copy the Premier League and other successful leagues. They want to increase attendances. I mean, there's 3 revenue streams for any football club, any football business. And that's match day. That's people through the gate and selling pies and pints, although maybe not in Riyadh. There's commercial income, which is, sponsorship deals, shirts, kit deals, and then there's broadcasting revenues. You've got match day, commercial, and broadcasting, and they want to professionalize Saudi football to increase those revenues. Now, fine, if you've got a bunch of foreign stars, and you can get more people through the gate, they'll be able to increase their match day revenue by maybe getting crowds up from 12,000 to 15,000 or whatever, and local audiences might well be attracted by that. Commercially, yes, you can probably attract a bit more sponsorship money if you've got Ronaldo or someone in your team, but we're not talking about magnitudes, that will completely transform Saudi football and make it a top league. And equally, broadcasting revenue, who is actually going to pay to subscribe to a TV channel or whatever to watch a bunch of aging players play for teams that you have no interest in. And this is kind of what I asked in my article. I was sort of asking the readers, are you going to seek out a subscription to watch the Saudi Pro League and pay extra money for that? Are you going to buy an Al Hilal or an Al Ali shirt or an Al Nasser mouse mat because Cristiano Ronaldo is there? Probably not. Are you actually going to go to Saudi Arabia to watch these games being played? And the answer is almost certainly no for most people. It's not like, we ourselves and our friends and people we know have been to the Bundesliga to go to watch Dortmund or Berlin or whatever, because it's a good weekend. There's, good beer, cheap tickets, interesting football with people, clubs that we know.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening at scale in the Saudi Pro League until and unless there's a critical mass of genuine peak age players. And by that, I mean, can you imagine like Gareth Southgate's current England squad, whether that's Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, whoever,
Bellingham.
Jude Bellingham. Can you imagine these players going to Saudi Arabia any time while they were in their peak? No. Why not? Because what matters to them is properly elite football, not just elite bank balances. They want to be in the most competitive leagues and the biggest tournaments. They want to be playing in the Premier League or La Liga or Bundesliga. They want to be winning the Champions League. And that's not on offer in Saudi Arabia. And that's before you even get to the lifestyle thing of if you've got a wife and kids and you have are used to living in a Western lifestyle. So suddenly all the limitations that Saudi Arabia may bring, depending on what your lifestyle's like.
Just the final two from me. I think obviously you mentioned the sort of Western approach, but one thing not to be dismissive of is the Saudi Arabia football culture, is it? Because we saw it in the World Cup. They brought so many fans over, their amazing performance against Argentina. And there is a genuine football culture in Saudi Arabia, which sort of probably differs from China and the Chinese Super League, where there is an inherent culture there in football, isn't there?
Yeah, completely. And I say in my article, to suggest that the Saudi Pro League won't become one of the top 5 or 10 leagues in the world is definitely not to disparage Saudi football. There's a long tradition of it being a big football supporting country. Football's the national sport. They've done well internationally, been at World Cups, done really well in the Saudi teams have done really well in the Asian Champions League. We saw the supporters in Qatar from Saudi Arabia, really passionate, really fun. So I'm not disparaging Saudi football culture at all. It's not like Qatar, where really there wasn't that. It's not like the Chinese Super League, where there has been football for years, but it was still very much, professionalism and a league was a novel thing. That's not the case in Saudi Arabia. But, so I'm not disparaging that. I'm just saying that in order to produce a really genuinely top league, these things evolved over decades. The Premier League evolved over decades, into what it is now through luck and circumstance and planning and all sorts of other things. I don't think by spending billions of pounds on a group of mostly aging players to play primarily at 4 big clubs is going to, be a product that people in Britain or other countries are going to sit down and watch ahead of other leagues that we're already familiar with. I just don't see it. It doesn't stack up financially. It doesn't stack up as a fan, as a thing that will engage fans. We're talking about money and contracts and all the controversy rather than the football, because when it comes to the football, it's just really not that appealing at this point, and I can't see it being for the foreseeable future.
Just finally, is there a bit of over the Premier League has just been dominated by money? Sort of we've had our cake and eaten it, and we've accepted all that money into the game. Now another league's doing that and trying to buy football, which is what's happened over here. Is that not just the case where we have to accept that, and we've had that over here, and now Saudi Arabia are doing exactly the same thing that's happened in the Premier League?
Not really. I mean, there's not sort of sour grapes from my side of the argument in terms of, oh gosh, look at them trying to buy football. If they want to do that in the way that the Chinese Super League, then good luck to them, and if it works, it's great. But what they're not doing is go back to 1992 when the Premier League started, 92, 93. The Premier League wasn't the best league in the world or even in Europe. Serie A was the preeminent league with the biggest stars and the highest wages. And Serie A remained in that position until the early years of the early noughties. It was only 2003 or 4, when I think wages in the Premier League finally overtook Serie A, and then a greater critical mass of players came. If you go back to 96, Euro 96 was kind of a significant point, having a tournament here, and suddenly all these, Poborski and various other Czechs and players, were seen and noted for the first time, and then English clubs started signing them up. The Bosman case was crucial in the development of the Premier League, as was Rupert Murdoch's money and Sky, and various things happened. And by the time you got to the early 2000s, and the Premier League was just starting to inch ahead in terms of talent, the Premier League at that point was in a bit of a virtuous circle of being able to attract players from all around the world, and a lot of sort of peak age players, which then attracted an international audience, because suddenly people in Brazil and Argentina wanted to watch the Brazilians and Argentinians, and the people in Japan wanted to watch the Japanese players, and people across Africa. And then the Premier League started, selling TV, doing their own international TV deals on a territory by territory basis, and the domestic audience grew, and so did the money. So the money got bigger. The more money you've got, the more talent you can attract. The more talent you've got, the more people in more countries want to watch you. And it's been in that virtuous circle ever since. The difference with the Saudi Arabia is they're trying to do something, they're trying to do that on warp speed in a way, but spending so much money. There is I know that people will say, but the Saudis have got trillions if they want. But there is, if they're arguing on the one hand, they want to grow the game and make it more professional, whatever, doing it this way by spending hundreds of millions of pounds on billions of pounds on wages and players, and not even the best players. We're talking about largely old players, famous players, yes, but old players. They're not developing a product organically. And I don't see that changing in the short or medium term. If you said, will the Saudi Pro League be a rival to the Premier League in 25 years' time, then you have to allow that will be a possibility if they want to spend billions and billions of pounds every year for now. But as you said, a shorter cut, if they wanted to do that, would be to make an audacious bid for the whole of the Premier League and see where that got them. Imagine if they offered £100 billion to the Premier League, so that every Premier League club owner would have £5 billion, and then they move the thing to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
they just moved it. Brighton moved to Riyadh. Manchester United moved to Mecca, and suddenly it's the Premier League. But this is fantasy land, but that in a way would be the quickest route to sort of make put Saudi at the center of global football. But it's obviously not going to happen.
Well, yeah, I think they just got me thinking from your article and the way they operated with Liv, and when now in hindsight, it just feels like Liv was there to sort of make this PGA deal happen, and is all the money going into the Pro League trying to make this happen for sort of the Premier League to get worried. But we won't know. We don't know what deals are going on in the background. Nick, thank you for your time. Your article will be down in the description below. Where can people check you out on social media, which I know you love?
Yeah, if you on Twitter, I'm just on Twitter at Sporting Intel, all one word. And Will, can I ask you, what do you think? Would you seek out a Saudi Pro League subscription to watch the games?
Not currently. I mean, it would take my beloved Jude Bellingham to even tempt me to watch out there. It was even things like, Gary Cook's coming to Birmingham City. He was heading up the Pro League over there, wasn't he? So that's probably a bit of a worry for them. Messi turning them down as well.
He lasted a few months. He lasted a few months, Gary Cook, having gone there with great fanfare, and you have to wonder why. Messi's turned them down. Jose Mourinho's turned them down. Sergio Busquets has turned them down.
You've turned them down.
Has turned them down. A lot more people have turned them down than said yes. That's the other thing. Yeah. It's not, money is not everything to a lot of footballers, even though it is everything to some footballers. Yeah. So there's a lot of people turning them down.
But it's also there, isn't it? Like at the moment, it's a clear career path, isn't it? You have a good career, win all your trophies till you're 30, 31, and then that league is still paying that money when you get there anyway. So why would you sign when you're 26 unless you don't think you can reach the pinnacle, maybe like a Neves?
Yeah, well, because they're going to pay Neves £15.6 million tax-free, and that's 3 or 4 times what he gets at Wolves. So he'll go and do 2 or 3 years there and be set up for life, and then maybe come back and play proper competitive football in Europe somewhere later.
I mean, who knows? I could be doing That's Football Saudi Arabia watch-alongs in the future. So we never know. And they could own the Premier League by the end of next year. So we just never know, do we?
I mean, they could own That's Football. If they came in with an offer, are you going to say no to 100 million? Will?
Hey, it's not mine to say yes or no to. That's the boss's decision. So I'll let him decide that one. And on that note, Nick, thank you for your time. Make sure you check out Nick's article in the description below. Follow him on social media. If you've enjoyed this, let us know down in the comments below, because we'd love to do more stuff like this on That's Football. I've been Gark Moldbridge, and we'll see you soon.